Okay, I am wearing a funny hat because the point I wanted to emphasize in what you were talking about, especially about level 2, is that the mind doesn't perceive in a straightforward manner. I mean, it just doesn't go to one part of the mind and get interpreted. Obviously, there's an emotional reaction, subconscious reaction to every word and every signal and every nuance that's attached to some conversation or event or thing that we are absorbing an interaction with. And then there's how we consciously perceive it. And so, through words, or how we consciously complete our awareness or understanding of what we're experiencing. And it's the distinctions are probably subtle, but I don't really think you can combine emotion and logic. There really needs to be a distinction, a level 2A and a level 2B, because the two ways the brain absorbs and remembers and retains and is affected are really too different to be described or defined, categorized as the same thing. Today, I was having, stupid arguments with people and whatever, and I caught myself seeing meaning in words that isn't in just the words. I mean, words are representations, and depending on your attitude and your mood and the context, the words can mean, each word is more than just its letters. You have both that emotional response and the intellectual one, plus the context of how you're already disposed when you're receiving it, what kind of mood you're in, also affects the interaction. And so there's nothing pure in how the energy is conveyed from one person to another. It's first converted into words, at least through direct communication, and then those words are reinterpreted by the receiving party, and they can be interpreted completely differently than the intent behind how they were sent, and creating misunderstanding, creating all kinds of things. But it's just such an ineffective way to sometimes communicate ideas, because imprecise phrasing changes everything, or a hat changes how what I'm saying might affect you, because you might subconsciously or emotionally react to the hat, and that will distort and change how you receive the information. And I don't know how this fits in exactly with what you're talking about, because I don't fully understand the blueprint, because ultimately it all comes down to, what does it mean? And for me, meaning is, there was some words you used, they're kind of key words, is that we have our identity, we have our thought, and we have our interaction, and through all of that we end up with meaning. And who knows? Like I said, I don't know how to put that into some kind of coherent, practical, meaningful ambition or purpose. I see purpose in understanding how our psychology works, so we can better control its function, so we can make it work better. I can see applying this, in a sense, to understanding, acquiring something that might even be called logical discipline. You know, if we understand how our brains work, we would be disciplined against the malfunction, disciplined against the reaction that is just superfluous or not relevant, like a hat or hair color or skin color or long hair, short hair. I mean, today, you know, having an argument over someone who sees these things as relevant. I mean, if you're a hippie, you are categorized and you're put into a category, and that's what you are. And there's no escaping that stereotype of them. And they'll use that as an argument, as if it means something. And it's, you know, how can you have you know, any kind of logical conversation if people are going to apply a context that's so littered and cluttered with irrelevancy that the message is so distorted and so lost that it could never be received in any kind of, there's no way to communicate, because the translation is so bad from one mind to another that everything of value is lost. And in the context of you know, the first level, you know, the social mind, you know, I think this is very relevant, because, you know, to have a social mind, the parts of the mind have to be able to communicate. And if they can't do that effectively, you know, then there's not going to be anything. There's no growth, there's no expansion, there's nothing to build on. You're just constantly it's like sandpaper against sandpaper. I mean, it's just all abrasion and nothing productive to come from it. Because we're not refining anything, we're just reacting to everything, we're just picking at everything. So anyway, that's sort of where I ended up today. And so it's just interesting that, you know, there's just so much context to all of this. I mean, if you made your video on a different day and I reacted, my reaction would be completely different tomorrow than it is today. And it's just, you know, these are the vagaries that you know, that's the context that we're dealing with, is that there's so much that is, there's just so much distortion in the system, so many causes and effects, so much noise, that unfortunately maybe the real meaningful part of the whole experience is lost. It's almost like there wouldn't be much practical purpose in having eyesight if you saw, you know, if there was too much noise or if everything was filtered so much that you couldn't resolve anything, you couldn't really see it, everything was just fog, you know, because you might end up just reacting to shadows and ghosts and things that aren't there. And so in a way it would be counterproductive, even though it was some eyesight, even though there was some vision, it was so limited that it was unproductive, because you were always reacting to a false reality. And it's almost like that's where we are in the social mind, is that there's so much noise in society, so much hate and prejudice and presumption and rationalization, that there's nothing meaningful. 10 minutes, so